The United States says that it's reached a deal with China to temporarily slash reciprocal tariffs. It marks a significant de-escalation in the trade war that blew up last month when President Donald Trump imposed sweeping levies. And speaking after the high-stakes talks in Geneva, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced both Washington and Beijing had agreed to cut tariffs on each other's goods.
We have reached an agreement on a 90-day pause and substantially moved down the tariff levels. Both sides on the reciprocal tariffs will move their tariffs down 115%.
Let's get more with our correspondents. Katrina Yu standing by for us in Beijing. But first, we'll cross to Willem Marks joining us from Geneva. So, Willem, I suppose many people will be breathing a sigh of relief, right? Just tell us what the takeaway message was from that press conference.
Well, there were a couple of major messages from the US side, essentially saying that the impacts of the tariffs we saw rise as high as 145% would not yet have been felt by the economies of both countries, though, of course, US businesses might seek to disagree with that statement. The other message from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was that this was all part of a strategic rebalancing of trade between the US and China. This was all part of the plan. There had been a process, and there would now be a mechanism in place. That is some of the detail coming out of this morning's statement, is that there will now be repeated talks between the US and China, led by Bessent and the US Trade Representative Jameson Greer, opposite He Lifeng, the Vice Premier for Economic Affairs based out of Beijing. Those talks will take place, we're told, either in the US or China or potentially a third country, which could include Switzerland. Both sides very grateful, they said, to the Swiss for facilitating this dialogue over the course of the weekend, Doreen.
Okay, Willem, thank you so much. We'll let you go for now. Thanks for that reporting from Geneva. Katrina Yu joining us from Beijing. So tell us what more the Chinese side have said following these talks, Katrina.
Well, just before 3 p.m. local time here in China, we had a joint statement description released by Chinese state media Xinhua, and that really reflected a lot of this positive sentiment, these positive messages that we're hearing from the White House. It said that China recognizes the importance of sustainable, long-term, mutually beneficial trade relations, that these consultations are the way to resolve issues of concern, and that these will continue with a spirit of mutual openness, cooperation and mutual respect. So I think definitely we're seeing here this firmest signal from Beijing that they're sincerely working to really dial back some of those fiery tensions that we've seen that were really sparked since the beginning of Trump's second term, that China is sincere about resolving this trade war, that it does not want to continue this tit-for-tat, these tit-for-tat moves that would really lead to mutually assured economic damage, if not economic destruction. And China is doing this not only for its sake of its own economic growth, but for the sake of the international economic community. And also, we're not just seeing the drawback of these 125% tariff on US goods to 10% for 90 days. It also seems that we're seeing the scrapping of these non-tariff measures. So China had also in recent weeks put restrictions on several American companies, and it had also controlled the exports of crucial rare earth minerals to the United States. Now, however, we did have that very positive joint statement description released from Chinese state media, but we also had another statement separately released by China's Commerce Ministry, and that did see the repeat of some of these stronger, fiery tones. It said the US has been abusing tariffs under the guise of reciprocity. This is bullying. And then these very pointed words, I think, that are not only for the US, but also targeted for the international community, saying appeasement cannot bring peace. Compromise cannot be respected. To seek to skin a tiger by damaging the interests of others for one's own selfish interests is to end up with nothing. So we hear China there still maintaining a very strong stance, the repeat of this sentiment that China will not stand to see its own national interests damaged without fighting back. So it does seem, although on the one hand China is very positive about the continuing of these consultations, this mechanism for dialogue, on the other hand, Beijing has not dropped its guard down. It's going to forgive, but it's not entirely going to forget what we have had, this tit-for-tat from the Trump administration these past few weeks.
Thank you so much, Katrina. You're reporting from Beijing.